Advisory Board meeting to order, and I will ask Blair to do a roll call.
Mr. Capitan? Mr. Steen?
Here.
Ms. Fry? Mr. Hagan? Ms. Haugen?
Here.
Mr. Davison?
Here.
Mr. Madler?
Here.
Ms. Saar? Ms. Bollinger?
Here. Thank you. And in your packet that was emailed out, or if you have another one right here in front of you, was the March 4th Advisory Board meeting minutes. Any changes or additions? Did you get a chance to review? If there are none, I would make a motion to approve.
So moved.
Dan, a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Minutes, the motion passed, and we are going to move on to this month. In April, we have the program spotlight of our Adult Protective Services, which covers not only Cass County, but the southeast corner, the 5 counties in Region 5. The 5 counties in the southeast corner of Region 5, Trail, Steele, 6 counties, Ransom, Sargent, Richland, and Cass. So we have Chelsea Nichols with us and Susan Harris. We have 2 other workers within that department too, Jeremy Perro and Lindsay Olson. And but Chelsea and Sarah obviously got the short straws. Not just kidding. The other workers are out on in the community serving, but I think it's probably been a year since you've been here, or over a year. And just wanted to give, we've taken some time with family services, we've taken some time with economic assistance, but I think it's good to have just an overview of what APS does and a little bit of their experience. So open questions and answers. Those of you joining us virtually, make sure if I don't see your hand, speak up. They're more than happy to take questions as well. So I'm not sure how you ladies want to start, but I'll let you go. Conversation.
Yeah, because it's really hard to pinpoint exactly what we do because we do everything. So our program is Adult Protective Services, and what that means is we investigate allegations of abuse, neglect, self-neglect, and exploitation of vulnerable adults. And so in order to be deemed vulnerable through state statute, and that's anyone 18 or older that has like a significant cognitive or physical impairment, and those 2 things have to impede their ability to essentially help protect themselves. So like a big thing is someone who has dementia and they're being financially taken advantage of by like their power of attorney or someone else that could be a stranger too, or getting scammed. And how the entire process works is if someone is wanting to file a report and bring it to our attention, it is all centralized in an intake system out of Bismarck. So people can report by calling, emailing, faxing, online reporting. And then that information does go to Bismarck, and they essentially call a reporter back to gather additional information. And if there's if it's law enforcement that files it, or ambulance or fire department or a neighbor, and there just isn't a lot known about their vulnerabilities, they automatically usually just screen those in, and then we make that determination. And usually how that works is we'll call the health system, Sanford or Sentia, and see if they're on anybody's radars, and then just ask if they have. Usually the social workers we work with in the community are very well aware of us. We talk to them many times a week. Last week, I think I talked to one of them all 5 days. She knows my number by heart. But usually they know what we're calling about, what we're going to ask, and they'll look and if there is no vulnerabilities without disclosing any of their medical record, they'll just tell us, there isn't anything that would necessarily classify them as a vulnerable adult. And then at that point, we can screen out, but if there are concerns, then we take that and go from there. One big thing we've been seeing an uptick with are scams. Like people are making reports and they're getting scammed. Fortunately or unfortunately, however you look at it, many of those conversations that I've been having with clients that have come across my desk, they're very well aware they've gotten scammed. They're embarrassed. They don't want, any further contact from us, and we've already acknowledged that they're not vulnerable. So we close. Then, if there are causes for concern, we work very well with the local banks. And just a side note, all the local banks are absolutely fantastic to work with, far better than your bigger guys. So that's always much appreciated. And usually once they have calls from us, then they kind of put the client we're calling on like on a radar, and will let us know if there's any concerns or, hey, this transaction came about, just wanted you to know. So we're good at that. And then other components, we work with like the area hospitals and systems. So it's all encompassing our position. We work with banks, the health systems, law enforcement, school systems, fire department. Yeah, anyone can file a report. We even had one come from cable back when it was Cable One. Is Cable so? Regardless, they filed a report and it was actually very concerning. We ended up getting guardianship for that person and nursing. And mailmen, we work with the mail system, especially if someone's being scammed, to let us know, they'll sort through people's mail and will let us know this is a scam and keep us updated.
Yeah, like Chelsea said, our goal is to overall investigate the concern, what the allegation is, abuse, neglect, or exploitation. But I think people sometimes have the misinterpretation of what adult protection can do. We can't force people to accept services. We can't force them to stop talking to a scammer. We can't force them to do a lot, unfortunately, and we see it all the time. People don't live the way that I would choose to live, and we can't control how they live. So, I mean, a lot of times people think they make a report, we can just go knock on the door and say, hey, you're not safe, you need to go to the skilled nursing facility, and they're on their way. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. Our goal is to investigate, substantiate, or unsubstantiate the allegations, and then offer support services to mitigate their risk of continuing to be abused, neglected, or exploited.
There's many times that there will be a report come to us and they'll say this person's living in a hoarded home. They're mentally ill. They're not taking their medications. They're not cleaning their house. And these are the kinds of situations that are the toughest on us, because we leave those environments and we know that at any point they could fall and pass away. But we always, like I said, make sure we do a very good, thorough job at, if we bring those concerns with their medical provider, they will, sometimes have them come in for an appointment, and then they'll assess their cognition and say, yes, we feel they have the capacity. I guess I should clarify, capacity is a term that we use when someone, like all of us have the ability to make decisions for ourselves. When someone's capacity is in question and they lack capacity, that means that there's either like a dementia process, or they're so mentally ill that they literally cannot make any safe decisions on their own behalf, or even know where they are, what day it is, that type of thing. So once we do have them evaluated for capacity, then we, we'll go back and offer services or help to the clients. But if they refuse, then they have the ability.
You get reports. Can I ask a question?
Oh, absolutely.
I should have first off said, how long, Chelsea, have you been in your role here?
December was 8 years.
Okay. And Susan's,
September will be 3 years.
so there's years of experience within, probably Lindsay has the longest tenure, or are you longer than Lindsay? All the same.
Yeah, we started APS the same day.
So our department has a long tenured, 3 being the the shortest tenure, but Susan came from working in senior living,
Yeah.
right? A senior, but not all your reports necessarily are seniors.
Correct. Oh, yeah, yeah, right now we have a 20. Yeah. And our experience is all very like that. I come from a background of psych and all levels of care. So inpatient, outpatient, children, adults, chemical dependency. So that tends to be my niche for cases, and piecing things together. Susan has long-term care and Medicaid, and then Lindsay also has mental health, and then Jeremy comes from the hospital. So he's very well aware of those processes too.
Go ahead, Brian.
Just a couple of questions, maybe each answer this, but what are your two biggest challenges today?
Lack of funding for a lot of programs, and then overall just
The
complexity. Yeah.
mental illness.
Yeah.
So with that, if you go into the house and you know, there could be on drugs, alcoholism is rampant or whatever, can you force them into treatment if they're really in a jam? You know, if they're, you know, I don't know how, you know, is there a level where you can force them into some type of a facility to get, you know, so they don't hurt themselves, let's say, or hurt others?
There is, so that's what we've been doing, and the mental health system right now, unfortunately, is also inundated and overloaded. There's, there's lack of inpatient beds, outpatient beds, and overall. So when we have someone, a report comes to us and they're using meth, for example, I have one that I just did this with, she's using meth, started a fire in her apartment, ended up at the hospital, but they determined she had the capacity, so she was able, once she stabilized, they sent her back home. But I know that state statute, if for one of the criteria for a civil commitment to be forced into treatment is if, you're destructing property when you're intoxicated, which she was. And she's not able to meet her basic needs, like she's getting evicted. So I did the petition for civil commitment, and that goes to the state's attorney's office, and they send it to Southeast. So then we go with Southeast to assess, and she was clean and sober at the time. So in order to force someone into treatment, they have to be imminently, like right then and there, either, so impaired by their using that they're about to die, or they're threatening people. So unfortunately, she was I don't want to say unfortunately, glad she was clean and sober, but there wasn't enough imminency there to push her in. So yeah, we can't force. We can, if there's a guardianship, if they have, there's an uptick of this as well as alcohol-induced dementia. And so I have two right now that they're floundering in the community, but waiting for a guardianship for them. And so once I obtain guardian or find a guardian to take them, then we'll be looking towards basic care placement. So then they're removed from their environment.
Kyle has a question. Go ahead, Kyle.
So I think you answered a little bit with the guardianship statement, but the challenge of lack of money. So that I just want to dig a little deeper in regards to, so what is the lack of money prohibiting you from doing better or doing more of, or
Sorry. Sorry if I cut you off. So there's several different programs that we can offer people. And through the county, it's based off of income. And right now where things are at is based off of someone, like your average person just receiving Social Security is anywhere from $1,200 to like $2,200 a month. And so when you calculate rent, other bills, food, utilities, things like that, oftentimes people don't have enough money left over to pay for services coming in, even if it's through the county or even paying private pay. So what happens is these people are told, that they have a client share of like $300-400 that they'll have to pay out of pocket. in order to receive in-home services. And of course, that using that amount of money for them, they don't often even have $300 to $400 left to put towards care. So then people go without it. Therefore, without having any help in home, it leads to an increase of ER calls or 911 calls, and they're brought into the ER. And so then it's just a vicious cycle. And then where we get stuck is people will continue to file reports and say, this person keeps coming in, they don't have any help at home, can you get them help? But if there's no money to pay for the services, then unfortunately they have to sit at home and suffer.
So
And
who sets the rates for services? Who sets that percentages of income, that sliding rule that you're referring to? Where does that get set at?
It comes from the DHS for home and community-based services.
Okay.
And then there's also some Medicaid guidelines there too. So there's some, they also have to make sure they're follow the guidelines and rules within the Medicaid limits too. If people are on Medicaid, then that makes it a lot easier because then the services are usually like lower cost or the fee is reduced. But for people who aren't on the medical assistance or maybe a little bit over the threshold for their income for receiving services or receiving a reduced fee, is where, there's a large crack that people fall into.
Because it's really through the state HCBS, Home and Community-Based Services, which is not a county, not a zone service any longer. It's through the department.
Through the state, yeah.
And that then is either Medicaid or through that, they follow guidelines. I don't know the correct terms for that. We have a small zone funded HCBS. I think I talked about that in the last operations report, where we have agreements with providers, but they're allowed X amount. It's those guidelines through MA and that program on how much time can be spent. And then we work with our partnering zones to try to, but I know what's that, Community Care in Castleton? I met with them and they said, oh, we could fill up 3 workers if you had that home and base, which is probably a little different population than you guys, not necessarily, but some little different population. If we could provide those services earlier, maybe the mental health or dementia, those home things, you won't get the call.
Yeah, and oftentimes like the county development programs, the services there are very small, like
Mhm.
maybe an hour once every.
Grocery shopping.
Yeah,
Or
and it keeps them.
laundry,
And
keeps
otherwise
them in the
need-
home.
Yeah, otherwise the need is pretty big. And then there's, I know a big ticket item recently for legislation too is talking about guardianships. The amount of guardians that we have available in the state compared to how many people that are on a waiting list to receive one is huge right now. And then Michelle Gayette also just informed us at a meeting the other week. So whenever someone does need a legal guardian, if they are considered low income, then the state has what they call the establishment funds. So we always request as part of the first step in our guardianship is that pays the legal fees for the attorneys that we use. And it's, a typical guardianship is anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000, depending on if there's people that don't agree with it, things like that. But so these funds pay they just upped it to $3,000 to the attorneys we use. And she said, based off of where the stats were at, that we had enough left for like 8 or 9 guardianships for the next, foreseeable future. So if those spots get taken up, that means we're not only not going to have guardians, we're not going to have any money to be able to even use to petition. So I think unless that funding gets passed, we're going to be seeing some pretty dire situations. I even have one like the bed bug situation I was talking about from last week. I even changed his request to an emergency, but because there's going to be a lot of work involved, the guardianship agencies are telling me they can't take it because they're already inundated with other cases we have recently given them. So right now it's just kind of unfortunately a waiting game of not if something will happen, but when. And that oftentimes will lead to death. We've had people die when we're waiting for a guardianship to get in place. Brian?
A quick question on guardianships. How do you recruit those and do we recruit those? Because, I mean, yeah. I mean, is it family members normally or is it, yeah,
I was gonna, yeah, if you guys could just kind of give an elementary overview of guardianships.
Oh,
I
yeah.
know there's some misunderstanding. Sometimes
Yep.
people are asking for you guys to become guardians, and that's just not really how it works. So can you give kind of an overview and tie in guardians are, where they come from?
Yeah, yep. So guardianship is when someone's been deemed to lack capacity. If they've seen any doctor can meet with Blair and say, Blair has dementia. She should not be making decisions independently. And so generally, law says any, family, there's unwritten rule, they can make decisions on your behalf, informally. However, most placement like nursing homes and things like that need an actual someone to take that responsibility. And so then usually our first step is when we're told that someone lacks capacity is we try to find any family members we can, because by law we have to. So we will get, usually have law enforcement help us with names and numbers of people who live out of state, and we'll reach out to them, discuss the situation, and more times than not, family says absolutely not. It's a big responsibility because guardianship is all encompassing. You're not only making, decisions on what meds someone gets, but you're also responsible for where are they going to live. You have to manage all of their assets. So if our clients have homes, land, I have one right now. He's trying to deal with a tribe in Arizona and he's not getting anywhere, but she has land and a house and money there. So guardians, it's a big undertaking. In addition to that, the guardianship agencies, they're required to be, they have to take almost sort of like real estate exams. So it's very time intensive and they're testing, they have all day testing. And if you don't if you don't pass, then you only have 6 months to retake it. So, so that's what people don't want to become a guardian, because you're on call. You're getting calls at 3, 4 in the morning. And you're getting a lot, just like we face a lot of pressure for, our cases. People call and say, you're not doing anything. Guardians get it times 10. And so that's, I think, where we're at this point in time, is that there's not only the lack of guardians and the funding, but also there's limited options, so when we present a case to them and say, I have this individual with alcohol-induced dementia, he's wandering, found in traffic, and police have to bring him back, and also has a criminal history, it's hard to find placements that will take individuals like that, and it doesn't happen. So that's kind of a snippet of what we've been dealing with lately is.
So is there professional guardianship agencies in North Dakota?
Yes, there's very few.
Okay.
Lutheran Social Services of Minnesota can take North Dakota residents, which is we're thankful for. Then there's Catholic Charities, and then there's GAMD in Bismarck, and then there's a few Guardian Angels out of Jamestown, and then there's a few professional guardians that work independently, but their caseloads are maxed out. And then there's an agency in Northwood, North Dakota called Lighthouse, but they only serve the Grand Forks area.
That question. So first of all, thank you for what you do. It's very tough. And so basically, when it's all said and done, people fall through the crack and people die, right? And I've seen that as well in low affordable housing. They can't make their decisions, and the next thing you know, you're reading about them in the paper. And so the question is with all the red tape and all the hoops you have to go through and all of the challenges day to day that you just described, is there one or two things that can be done, changed, modified, to maybe lower that people die? Instead of 10, maybe it's 7. I'm just trying to figure it out because it is challenging and frustrating on And if you're the landlord and you're calling for a concerned tenant, they refuse services over and over again. And then they are either a risk to themselves and others, i.e. they're starting fires. And so you have to evict and then they die, or they just die in the alley. Just anything, I don't know.
And we try, we're in their homes, there's repeat offenders, we try and something like. And maybe we've been there 9 times, but the 10th time they're like, sure, like, then we can implement services, but otherwise if someone tells us to go fly a kite, like, people have a right to say no and live how they want to. Again, we wouldn't necessarily live on our own urine and feces and fruit flies and eat moldy food, but it's the essence of humanity. Can make those choices and live like that. I mean, do we still advocate though very much? I mean, because we know like even, I mean, we're the ears and eyes of the community. So there's like, I mean, and if it wasn't for us reporting back to some of these clinics and saying, because when they present in a clinic, someone can score 100% on their cognitive test, but then when you give them the details, like, no, they're not paying rent. Yeah, they're driving and causing accidents, things like that. Like then it usually prompts them to say, okay, well, maybe we need to do a more thorough job, which, yeah.
And I guess I'm looking for, is there like a new tool or something you can put in your toolbox that would help maybe lessen that or minimize that or help you, support you more so than, yeah, I just don't know. Whether it be legislatively funding or what,
Probably funding. I mean, I think we see that a lot is that people need alternative housing, but they can't afford a higher level of care, or they need subsidized housing, but there's a waiting list longer than years. So I think, yeah, kind of it all comes down to funding. But I think we talk a lot about what we can't do, but we do have a lot of successful
Oh my God,
cases.
yeah.
And those feel so good. I mean, we get people connected with resources, help them find housing, get them, set up with food because they don't have any food in their house, guardianships. I mean, we do have a lot of positives. And I think even for us, sometimes we forget how much of an impact we do make because we're like, we want to do more. We're in this profession because we want to help. And for people to not want our help is very difficult. When I started, I was like, why am I doing this? Nobody wants my help. Like, I'm not helping anybody, but there truly has been a lot of successful cases, and day in and day out, we are a help and a support to our community.
Yeah, Jeremy was recently listed in an obituary. That, thanks to Cass County EPS and Jeremy Perro for the help. I have a guy that has actually caused an accident. I witnessed it personally on University. Got him a guardian, and now he's doing wonderful in memory care. Several of Lindsay's clients have been placed at a nursing home in Ellendale. The same thing, was wandering late at night, almost hit by a car, and then seeing the smile on her, it wasn't eating and was, literally near death until Lindsay brought her into the hospital, and then they put her in a nursing home. So we always look at those pages and see how well that we did that. They wouldn't be here if it wasn't for us doing that. But to answer your question, yeah, we try to get creative, and people in the community also try to get creative with us. And how can we just insert a little bit of a safety net to their homes, even if it's a community paramedic going out once a week, just checking their vitals and making sure they're alive and they have food. But otherwise, yeah, funding is probably the biggest barrier we see.
I got one question. I was on the Stanford board for quite a few years, and a lot of those people kind of do their monthly tour of the Stanford recouping area, whatever you want to call it. And they get put back in the same position, and 6 weeks later they're back in. Stanford went to a deal where I think they placed some of them in the New Life Center after they're out of there, as just kind of a trial period, and that seemed to kind of get them on that track of maybe you don't go home, maybe you get into, and kind of give them a few more days or a couple of weeks to kind of clear their mind and say, this is pretty good. But it'd be nice to, God, at some point, I don't know, maybe it's 30-day intervention to kind of get them back to the human race or whatever you want to call it. But you can't do that though. I mean, it sounds like if they want to go back to that house with no food and bed bugs and all that, you can't stop it. Yeah, see, I don't know. But anyway.
But
that's
I have
whole
a
new game.
question. Are there other states, because by state statute, really, they're adults, they're over 18 that you deal with. So if I want to live how I want to live and say, do not come back, Susan, I don't want to see you, even though we know we could provide or get coordinated with services. Is there other states that have some things on the law that gives programs such as yours a little more out or abilities to step in, or is it no?
No, it's pretty across the board.
Okay.
Yeah.
So healthcare or somebody has to deem incompetence.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's really next to impossible too,
Mhm.
because they won't go to the doctor. So then you're really stuck. You're like, okay, I know you can't make decisions, but they haven't been to a doctor and will not go to a doctor for them to be able to determine that you are not safe. So it's like, you just can't win.
And luckily we have made rapport, people in the community are used to us reaching out. There is, some providers that will say, we'll go against the grain, we'll come with you to the home and assess, and then we'll be willing to sign on. Yeah, and we also don't, just the bulk of our cases are yes people. We also, look into other things, like if people are being neglected. Financial exploitation is huge, and Susan recently had a case that hit the news. There's a few more coming down the pike too, that we're seeing high amounts that are being swindled out of people that need that money for their care.
From family.
Yeah.
Families are often the perpetrators. So.
You have, since you cover the 6 counties in Southeast Dakota, is it like 60% here? Do you have any idea? 40% out counties or rural, or is it
really
across?
ebbs and flows. I feel like if we get a report in Wapton, we get more in Wapton. Like it really kind of just ebbs and flows, but there's been times where I don't have to travel a lot. Weeks,
Yeah.
Mhm.
so it really just.
There was an incident in the home that caught law enforcement or first responders there, might get somebody.
And it's kind of like an iceberg, like for everything that we see that we go into a home for, like there's a million more things happening below. And the same thing in the smaller communities, they try to figure it out themselves without, God bless their souls for not getting a hold of us sooner, but they try everything they can. And then when they absolutely can't do it anymore, then they'll make a report. It speaks volumes to how we are in our, I have a lady out in Hunter right now that even the neighbors are going in and place and cleaning her up, and yeah.
On an average, monthly, how many people are you serving?
It depends, that ebbs and
It-
flows too.
yeah.
We usually see anywhere from 100 to 200 reports come in a month.
Okay.
And then on average, I'd say for us, anywhere from 10 to 20 will get actually like assigned to us per week. But whether we actually end up going to see those people is a different story. Once we do a little bit more digging investigation, then we might, call someone, and if tell us, go by kind of.
And I'd
Go
say,
visit.
yeah, approximately probably have, depending 20 to 40 people per caseload, open at a time. So.
And the intensity, there's some cases you could easily spend a week on just for one person, and next week you might be trying to divvy out your time. Yeah.
In all ages, all age range.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any other questions? I don't see any hands up on the screens. I guess you guys can see that over there too. Thank you.
I was just gonna tie in, now that we've got a great face and some information to tie to some of the names and the numbers that we see. Some of the numbers and metrics that we'll be reporting are the number of guardianships, caseloads, activity that you guys are doing in the community, sharing and things like that. And then there's quarterly statistics that are shared. So the monthly metrics are ones that you guys are informally keeping amongst yourselves, right?
Yeah.
And then there's quarterly metrics that come from the state portion. Is
Yeah.
that right?
Yeah, Michelle sends out, yeah, those. And that's a big piece. We do a lot of education. We are always out and about, like presenting to Sanford or hospice or credit unions. Yeah, we go everywhere we can to try to tell people exactly what we do. Get to us.
Yeah, we have a agreement or a contract really to have, APS is the zone's employees, but we do fund a little bit of it, not as much because I worked on that contract this last time. I said, hey, we're really short here. So it's almost like their programmatic supervisor is related within the state. Like there's only one other zone in the state of North Dakota that has APS, I think.
Montreal County.
Montreal,
Yeah.
and us. So we service this 6-county region and we have excellent workers, very independent, but you have to be independent in what you do and what you serve. But really a great resource for our community and the region. I know they're called upon often to even provide some training or input to the other workers across the state too. So thank you for taking your time. Yep.
Clarifying question to just what you said, only 2 counties, and those 2 counties cover the entire state, or are there counties in the state that don't have services, APS
There might be
services?
some that don't have.
There's 8, different regions. Us and Montreal County are the only ones that we were contract. Otherwise, the other APS workers, there's only 13 of us for the whole state, not including our intake. So they're employees of the state, but there's.
And they cover
I
that.
guess Jamestown's its own independent one too.
I was gonna say there was a, independent organization, nonprofit that does it. But did you say only 13, there's 13 workers? We have 4 of them for our region. So 9 others. I'm doing my math correctly. Like, oh, let me do that, for the entire state. And we all know that we probably could double the size in our region, but we can impact. What small thing can we do to ultimately impact to save somebody's life, hopefully, or their home, But thank you for the work you do. Appreciate that. Very good.
And anyone can reach out to us. I mean, if you have, a lot of people do that, they just call us and say, I have a situation I want to run by you. We are always more than happy because we don't want to leave anyone hanging out to dry.
You. No other questions there. I guess next thing, wanted to just put on the radar that it will be time coming up to do the advisory board does my review as the director. And I did include in the operations report, although I was looking at it this morning, I got the wrong month there because I have May, April, May. I didn't notice that till now. But if we, our review period is coming up. It's June 1st, 2023 through May 31st of 2024. That's the period of review. So we have already met with our leadership within the zone to start talking about that, to get that all done. But as I will be completing the draft, for those of you that haven't been on our board or forgot from the last period, the board does do my eval. I complete a draft and then work with the vice chair, who is Brian, and through Samantha. So in April now, I'll get my draft done. I will get that to Samantha. Samantha will be engaged with the vice chair and get it all for comments and reviews, and ultimately to be delivered to me from Brian by May 31st. And then in our June meeting, we'll officially accept that. We did it in the past. So just as a reminder, I wanted to put that out there, and I was going to call you, but I figured I'd just tell you.
I think I actually seen it in the report.
Yeah. Yeah, I put that in there.
One thing though, I think last time, help me out, but I think we sent it out to all of the board members too to get their input
Yep.
too, right?
And
Because
the
there's a process on
Yep,
that.
and Samantha will lead that because I can't lead that. So Samantha will be the lead and work with Brian. The department also is provided opportunity to give input. So she will lead all of that. I just wanted to put it on all of your radars that will be coming up. In the operations report, it was included in your packet. If you have any questions, thoughts, anything. One big thing, I did get the opportunity to meet the new commissioner of the Department of Health and Human Services. He was at our directors meeting in beginning of March. He comes from a background and his expertise is in eligibility services. And he's very busy right now. As all of us across the state, including our state partners, looking at our backlog and not just ours, the state backlog and SNAP and that timeliness. So very easy conversation with him, but it was good to meet him. He also had a town hall with all of eligibility statewide. On the request from the directors, he put on a town hall because since redesigns happened within economic assistance, how do I say it? There's lots of changes, like you change this way and then you change this way and then you change this way. And after that meeting with him at the directors meeting, we said, I think it would go a long ways. And he entertained that and he did a town hall, a virtual town hall for all of economic assistance for our workers. And he was, spot on. People asked him questions directly. So I think there's a bright future coming with that. Shayna did a great review of the March Madness theme, and you could read about that. That was kind of a push to do some overtime related to backlog of applications based on making it a theme, much like, well, the championship game is tonight, isn't it? So they did this. We still have a ways to go, but across the state, we're encouraging overtime to get some of that backlog done. The commissioner himself is, with his expertise, going in for some waivers that will actually, how I understand it, can go to the feds and ask for waivers that will help lessen the churn of applications. Because we pen because we're waiting for this, and we pen because we're waiting for this, but waivers can be requested. So I think his knowledge and expertise in that will bring our programs forward. So it's exciting. Lots going on. And I think our team here has been doing an excellent job stepping up to the plate. I should say making the bucket because it's a March Madness theme. I also included in there the final copy of what the zone directors had worked on towards the end of 2023 is a strategic plan for that association moving forward. And it's really the first time, as I understand it, that group has put together anything. And I think it's a very solid plan. And then the 19 directors are focusing, we broke down into certain, I'll call them work groups. So I'm actually working on with some other directors on goal 2, which is to deepen the association's impact in the shaping of implementation of state human service policy. So coming up to the next legislative session, that will be key. But I think it gives us as a group of 19 directors from a variety of different size zones, at least a common blueprint that we can agree to work forward on some certain issues, because sometimes we get a little off in the weeds.
Is
Seems
there a
like
timeline on that? Right, like,
this is like for the next 2 to 3 years. Yeah, it not by the
end of 20.
Right, right. Well, yeah, so I was curious about that. The other thing I was wondering about in that regard, and I'm sure it's elsewhere, but I didn't see it here, is measurement tools or how to gauge. progress.
That's what we're kind of working
That's
on
what
right
you're
now.
working on.
Yeah, this is just that plan. And then each of those subgroups are working within some of that. And that might not be, that's not in this document. Actually, in March, we spent a half a day working on beginning those timelines. What's the priority? And like, we need to have X, Y done by the legislative session, or have a common theme of what we're going forward to be our top priorities. And that will be important for us to bring back here as well. I talked about it in the past. Page 18 is just what I shared with our at our zone-wide meeting about the standards of administration that every zone in the state quarterly will be, lack of a better word, rated on, but I think it's an opportunity to look at if we're not meeting that measure, what is the gap? What is the purpose? It's a management tool for all of us and our leadership within our zone. So the dashboard for that is going to be built out by the state, or by the department, I should say, and that has not, although the first reporting period is supposed to be up in April. So not quite sure what that will all look like at that regards. And then it was just the summary, the Human Service Advisory Board monthly dashboard. And I wanted to give Samantha an opportunity to maybe just, if you page back to like the staffing turnover, the recruitment, which would be page 28. Want to highlight some things on recruiting and retention. We've had a really good kickoff in 20, I know it's early, but I want to give, well, I should first give shout out to Samantha and Blair, and actually the managers. Carissa's in the back with Family Services, and Shayna. We've onboarded a lot of people already in 2024, and the team, everybody here, we've hit a stride, and it's because of excellent everybody else's work. I don't take credit at all for that. It feels really good. As of, I think last week, Monday, was that April 1st? We have 15 CPS workers. That we have not had 15. We have 15 CPS workers. Are they all trained? We'll get there, but it felt really good to onboard that 15th worker. So you want to do something?
Yeah, the only thing I'll contradict is you should take some credit, because recruiting and retention it's everybody. I mean, it's a full process from the applicants that we're getting in, the amount of time that it takes to interview and onboard the number of people that we have from a management side. And then one of the things I mentioned at our zone-wide meeting was just thanking all of our team members, because truly the experience that new hires have when they're working with their peers and seeing the positions modeled and seeing the environment of the teams, that speaks hugely. And so the fact that we've gotten a little bit of stability in some of those efforts, I said I'm hoping that team members soon start to feel some of the relief when we say we have 15 CPS team members. They don't all feel the relief of that yet because they don't have full caseloads, but hopefully that will come and it will grow. So some of the things to call out, again, it's early. So it's hard to feel really excited, but when you see a 2% turnover with some of the numbers that we've had traditionally, it's hard to not celebrate that we've got a 2 there. Our number of hires, we've even hired a couple of more, because this is through nearly the end of March is what we're live through for hires and separations. We've had 2 more hires, no more separations to report for the zone. And we're just continuing to recruit. We are at a point right now where we've got a few postings that we're finishing up on and looking to extend some offers. And then we'll kind of circle back around to kind of repost those positions we have. We've got a question from Rick.
Thank you. I didn't know when to put this in, but you went past this, the section I was going to
Sorry.
ask about. Can you comment a little bit on page 23? It has to do with CPS open cases and what's going on there a little bit.
23.
You're right there.
On the first part of that, like from
Look at the
February.
bottom graph. At the bottom graph talks about open CPS cases.
Yeah, so it looks like we've got kind of a rise in the open cases. Carissa,
Yeah.
we invite you to come speak to that.
I mean, it's high as it's been since November. I'm just curious what's going on. Looks like there's a big influx of new cases in March.
And I think,
thought.
and Chris will have a better sense of this, but I visited a little bit about them. I think this time of year, March, there's a break, we're starting our busiest time with referrals, but if you have.
Yeah, so, and I mean, Rick, you've been with us for a while, so you probably are a little bit familiar with that as well, but really coming into that March, April, May here now, numbers really start to take an uptick
Okay.
for our workers. Don't know that there's a good reason why for that. What we also know is even though we have, to Samantha's point, a lot of workers now in positions, those workers are just starting to come out of their onboarding. And so they are just starting to pick up cases. And so we are really trying to move those cases to those workers. We don't have support coming in currently anymore right now. So we are managing the workload coming in for our workers on site. So I think we're seeing some uptick in numbers in that regard. We've also seen uptick in intensity of cases. So they're taking longer to finish. We're seeing kids that are needing alternative arrangements for placements, which is holding cases open longer, which impacts the open numbers on our open CPS cases. So certainly seeing some upticks there, certainly trying to develop some strategies with our team about what that can look like. We also have a number of workers right now going through standardized training, which also decreases our numbers of workers available, which logs those of the closing. So all things that we knew, just were not things that you necessarily plan around completely.
Okay. And then last, just a different type of question on page 26 of that handout.
Thanks to Blair, we put page numbers on it this time.
Yeah, I guess it's
Very helpful.
next page maybe. I'm looking at,
7.
it's the total benefits distributed by month page. Mine says 26, so it must be a couple more pages up. Keep going. Keep
It is
going.
page 26 on the bottom.
Yes, on the bottom. I think. Well, it's on the one I got handed out anyway. Keep
Yep, there we
going.
go.
Right there. Okay, right there. So what's going on with the payments here? I look at the number of total individuals served dropped significantly, but we're paying out about the same amount as we have been when the number served was significantly higher. Can any thoughts on that?
This is for, oh, this is October. Shayna, do you have any?
I think that the individuals served, the decrease there might be.
I mean, it's pretty significant, and again, the payouts have remained about the same, so I didn't go through and do any calculations, but I'm just thinking the payout per individual has gone up a fair amount. I'm just curious as to what's going on with that. Change in programming, change in funding, change in something.
I'd have to look at that.
Yeah, I'd have to kind of
take that figure.
Um,
October is
LIHEAP would not
LIHEAP.
necessarily make, October is when LIHEAP starts. I don't know that it would make, I don't know that you'd see a difference yet in LIHEAP because the payouts from that program extend into the end of May. So that wouldn't really, the only thing I can.
Here's what I'll do, Rick. I'll double check to make sure
Yeah,
that
just-
it's reported
yeah.
and correct.
Yeah.
I've noticed we're pulling this metric from a dashboard that's managed somewhere else. And I've noticed some variance, so I'll go and double check that the numbers that I have are correct and if they haven't changed from that. And then we'll dig in to see if we can find anything and either send out an update or if there's any changes made, we'll report back. Unless Trina did, did that stalling give any more time?
No,
to
it's
find
fine.
the
I
metric?
appreciate the,
Don't try to make stuff up. I'm just curious,
Yeah,
a few
no.
grants would be great, and it just struck me, and I'm looking at that and going, oh, a big reduction in individual served, but our costs remain about 3.3 million. I was like, well, what's happening there? So anyway,
Yeah.
that's just a question, curious.
well, and I'd love the opportunity to take a dive in and look at it and, because I think that's a good question and
Right.
deserving of an answer. I just don't have any ideas off the top of my head without do it.
And maybe just
Matt?
a follow-up, does that align with the chart above, the total households also served going down significantly?
Potentially, well,
They seem
the
to
top
follow a
one
similar
though,
trend there.
the top one does, I believe the top one might be most affected by Medicaid households going down because we're wrapping up the public health emergency. So a lot of households that we've had sustained since the onset of COVID have now closed because we've wrapped up that sustaining those cases.
But, and then that, you're not saying though that would
No, because the lower number doesn't include Medicaid payouts. So that's the only difference that I can see from the top.
just very
And
similar
don't
trend.
belabor this at this point. It's something maybe down the road if we can get an answer, maybe next meeting or something. I just because this graph is going to show up again, so I'd like to see.
We'll
you
look
know.
at that data,
Right.
yeah.
All right, thank you.
You know, Rick, I had noticed that too. We had a report a while back. I can't remember what quarter. Like 31,660, something like that, plus or minus individuals that were getting some sort of assistance.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't seen that number again. And it looks like things are trending down, but we could go back and reconcile to that report. You know, because if it's gone down, that's good for everybody. But
Right.
and I probably got a copy of that too. So
All right.
We'll look at that.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the dashboard, Jen?
Well, just a clarification, Krista, did you say no other zone assistance is occurring anymore?
We just have one worker still onboarding with another zone, but we've not had any workers coming in.
Coming in.
So, taking pieces at this point. Probably the last
Month, if not more,
Yeah,
and a half.
yeah, so.
We
And
have,
just out of curiosity, like what was the measure or the threshold that was used to make that decision?
Their
Their-
capacity as
their
well.
availability.
Yeah, they're also seeing an uptick. This is just naturally kind of a upticking time.
We've requested some assistance because we've had workers out for a full week for training. But yeah,
The feedback we've gotten was we had a few who were hoping to come and then some was weather and some was mostly they had to pull back because of their own caseloads. So that would align. Break you had mentioned was kind of part of that, preparing for summer.
any other questions? Otherwise, anything, since you're up here at the table, lady?
Yeah.
Anything from the people online? If not, I will call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And Brian seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oh, same sign. We will see you on May 6th. And